I was the most devoted follower by Jiang Songning's side. Over 10 years, I helped elevate her from an unknown pianist to a renowned premier pianist known in every household. Yet when she achieved fame and success, I chose to leave. Everyone laughed at my foolishness. Only I knew that this secret love I had harbored for 10 years needed to end. Later, a video of the top pianist's engagement party went viral. Jiang Songning, stepping on fragments of her $1 million custom wedding dress, searching desperately for me with reddened eyes. When I submitted my contract termination request, Jiang Songning's slender fingers paused on the piano keys. She turned her head, those beautiful eyes filled with confusion. Why? Standing by the floor-to-ceiling window in the piano room, I tried to keep my voice steady. Miss Jiang, I'm not young anymore, and it's time for me to settle down. After a brief pause, I added, recently, relatives back home introduced me to a suitable match. To ensure a smooth contract termination, I fabricated a lie that would harm no one. Jiang Songning's fingers tapped lightly on the piano keys, a habit when she was anxious. Scattered notes echoed in the piano room, as if telling a story. Seeing her slightly agitated expression, a bittersweet comfort welled up in my heart. After a long while, Jiang Songning placed the contract termination request on the piano. I can give you a vacation. Please reconsider the contract termination. At that moment, my resolve wavered. A voice kept tempting me. Stay. Just stay, then you can always be by her side. But reason told me. Shinemo, she's getting engaged to Xiao Yuan. It's wrong to pine for a married woman. My hand hesitated in the air for a long time, but ultimately didn't reach for the request. Being a manager is too demanding. After marriage, I want a more stable life. I'll properly hand over all my current work. I'm sorry, Miss Jiang. Having said this much, Jiang Songning spoke no more, only saying softly, I understand. Congratulations on your marriage. Before leaving the piano room, Jiang Songning had already immersed herself back into her piano world. To her, I was probably just the most competent among many staff members. That day, sitting in the break room, looking at her performance photo on the wall, I let my mind wander for the first time. In the past, I was always so busy I didn't even have time to take a sip of water, having to handle both her performance arrangements and take care of her daily life. I had to keep my communications open at all times, and whenever she had any needs, I had to be there immediately, shouldering the workload of multiple people by myself. Of course, she paid me well, allowing me to buy a house in Shanghai over these years. Little Zhang called my name several times before I came back to my senses. Brother Shun, Miss Jiang asked you to go tea. Oh, the club first to prepare for tonight's party. The evening party was to celebrate Bai Yao's return from the Vienna Conservatory of Music, and all attendees were from Jiang Songning's social circle. The young generation from wealthy families, born with silver spoons in their mouths, were quite snobbish. Normally their circle is quite exclusive, but they had no choice because I was just too capable. It's rare to find an agent who can both take care of everyone's feelings and arrange events flawlessly. As soon as I arrived at the club, I immediately dove into the preparation work. From wine vintages to tableware placement, to each guest's dietary restrictions, I arranged everything down to the smallest detail. Replace the champagne with sparkling water. Mr. Yi is abstaining from alcohol. Turn up the air conditioning temperature. President Chu is sensitive to cold. Remember to prepare aged pu'er tea. Miss Han loves it the most. As night fell, guests began to arrive. Yun Yao arrived first and greeted me immediately. When will Soning arrive? I glanced at my watch and answered cautiously. She's still rehearsing at the Vienna Concert Hall. She'll be here in about an hour. She slumped on the leather sofa, with fatigue in her eyes and a slightly pale complexion. I asked the waiter to turn down the music and brought a cashmere blanket. The autumn night is chilly. Please rest for a while. Others will have to wait a bit longer. She took the blanket and joked. Why don't you stop working for Song Ning and become my butler instead? I'll double your salary. In this circle, there are too many sycophants, which makes my proper and dignified attitude particularly precious. I joked with a smile. Well, thank you, Miss Bai. At least I'll have a backup plan if I ever lose my job. As night fell and lights brightened, the guests gradually arrived. Jiang Songning came in gracefully wearing a black evening gown and high heels, radiating elegance with a touch of coolness. As I took her coat, I thought this might be the last time I would serve her. After several rounds of drinks, I seized the right moment to announce my decision to terminate the contract to everyone. Raising my glass, I said sincerely, thank you all for taking care of me these years. Until we meet again. A moment of silence fell over the table, until Yun Qing raised her glass and broke the quiet. To be honest, at first we thought you had intentions towards Song Ning, but now it seems we were overthinking. Everyone understood what she meant. After all, Jiang Song Ning's previous managers were all dismissed for confessing their feelings to her. Later, she simply only hired female managers, but unexpectedly male assistants still secretly passed love letters, which became a joke for a while. Someone joked, I didn't expect there would be someone who could resist Song Ning's charm. Jiang Song Ning elegantly sipped her red wine and chuckled. How boring. After dinner, several people gathered to drink and chat. During this time, Yin Yao casually asked, Song Ning, I heard CEO Xiao is very interested in you? My hand froze. The motion of pouring wine for Jiang Song Ning suspended in midair. After a moment, she answered nonchalantly. It's just a family-arranged marriage. Marrying anyone is the same. In their circle, marriage has always been a bond of interests, while emotions are the least important. It seems she has also accepted such an arrangement, fully embracing the family's expectations. I've met Xiao Yuan, a nouveau riche in the business world, young and promising, indeed a good candidate. How I wish Jiang Songning could have a different ending, but reality often disappoints. The party continued until late night, with the guest drivers having waited for long. Only Jiang Songning's driver was delayed due to some emergency. So we stood at the entrance of the club, our shadows stretching long under the street lights. Such moments of being alone are the most dangerous, when suppressed feelings yearn to burst forth. But Jiang Songning just stood there quietly, the alcohol making her seem less aloof. Soon after, the driver arrived. Jiang Songning turned to look at me. Want to go together? I shook my head, showing a polite smile. Thank you, Miss Jiang, but my fiancée is on her way here. She nodded and gracefully slipped into the car. Finally alone, I pulled off my tie and leaned against the edge of the flower bed. For a moment, I didn't know where to go. The autumn rain came unexpectedly, with fine drizzle feeling particularly cold against my suit. I stood by the street waiting for a cab, which was hard to get in this upscale neighborhood. Due to road construction, drivers had to take detours. Jiang Songning didn't expect to see Shun Mo again, standing in the rain with his suit jacket draped over his arm, looking somewhat lonely. She was slightly taken aback, having never seen the usually meticulous manager Shun in such a casual state. At the company, he always wore perfectly pressed suits with his tie impeccably knotted at his neck. She had encountered too many men who deliberately displayed their charm, loosening their ties and showing off their collarbones and abs, pretending to be casual in front of her. But manager Shun was different. His professional competence and perfect sense of boundaries made her decide to keep him by her side. As the car was about to pass by, the driver in the front seat spoke. Would you like to give Manager Shun a ride? Jiang Songning's gaze was calm as she responded indifferently. Never mind. She had a poor impression of his late-arriving fiancé. Although Manager Shun was usually astute, his judgment in matters of the heart seemed lacking. However, this was his personal matter, and it wasn't her place to interfere too much. In the distance, what seemed to be Jiang Songning's car flashed by, disappearing in an instant. Perhaps it was just my imagination. In such a high-end residential area, people walking like me were indeed rare. The rain had soaked my clothes. My legs were numb by the time I finally caught a taxi. It was late night when I got home, and the apartment was suffocatingly quiet. I always tell people that I have a happy family, a deeply loved fiancé, and many close friends. Others say my life is perfect and enviable. But in reality, I have nothing, no family, no lover, and no friends. In middle school, my father was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. Shortly after the surgery, his condition relapsed. On an ordinary morning like any other, my mother left home as usual, never to be heard from again. She took all our savings, leaving behind only my gravely ill father and young me. Upon receiving this devastating news, my father remained surprisingly calm, quietly accepting treatment. During his hospital stays, he would occasionally cook for me when feeling better. That day after school, I came home to find the dining table full of dishes, with my father sitting across from me, wearing a gentle smile. For some reason, an unease crept into my heart, as the dishes gave off a strange smell. I noticed the newly bought pesticide in the kitchen, and at that moment I realized that even a seriously ill person could summon incredible strength, leaving me unable to move. When he had a violent coughing fit, I broke free from his grip and fled to the rooftop in panic. My father reached out to me with tears streaming down his face, his voice choked with emotion. Child, this world is too cruel. Daddy can't bear to let you face it alone. Come with me, we'll be father and son again in our next life. Tears blurred my vision. Exhausted, how I longed to smell my father's familiar tobacco scent again. Perhaps ending it all would be better, since there's no hope in living anyway. On the rooftop where cold winds howled, my father's embrace was the only warmth, as he held my hand tightly and slowly approached the edge. Just as we were about to fall, a pair of slender yet strong hands firmly grabbed me. She held onto me tightly, refusing to let go no matter how much I struggled. Swaying in the fierce wind, I only remember those eyes shining with unwavering determination. I survived, but my father left forever. The person who saved me was Jiang Songning, who not only gave me life, but also gave me a reason to keep living. To repay her kindness, I felt guilty for letting my father down. Back then, I was like a drowning person, desperately trying to grasp at any lifeline. And Jiang Songning is my beacon of hope. When the rescue team arrived, I held her hand tightly and looked up to ask, "How can I ever thank why?" "Oh, you." 14-year-old Jiang Songning looked down at me and said earnestly, "Just come find me in the future." From that night when I lost my father, my life seemed to come to a standstill, with only Jiang Songning being my motivation to move forward. Tonight, I was again awakened by nightmares, with memories of the past replaying in my dreams. In the dream, my father questioned why I abandoned him, and my mother's cold gaze when she left still pains me. I woke up covered in sweat, my throat too hoarse to make a sound. The thermometer showed 38.8 degrees. Usually, I might just take some fever medicine and continue working, pretending everything was fine. But this time I decided to take sick leave and properly think about the direction of my life. When Jiang Songning arrived at the piano room, she found that Shen Mo had called in sick. She frowned in thought, her impression of his fiancée becoming even worse. Assistant Xiao Yi temporarily took over Shen Mo's duties and brought her a cup of rose tea. Jiang Songning elegantly took a sip, maintaining her usual composure. The tea was weaker than usual, but she didn't object, simply putting down the cup and not drinking anymore. There was a mistake during the morning rehearsal, but fortunately, she knew this piece like the back of her hand, which prevented bigger issues. The temperature in the piano room was slightly high, with the humidifier running continuously, making her throat feel dry. Throughout the day, although she couldn't pinpoint exactly what went wrong, she felt something was missing. For the first time, Jiang Songning seriously thought about Shen Mo. She rarely noticed him before because he was always so low-key. He handled everything perfectly, just like spring rain nourishing all things silently. It was as if she had never been there, yet everything was just right. She slightly frowned. This was already the second time today. It's all because of Shen Mo's good-for-nothing fiancé, who forcibly took away her most capable agent. Tossing and turning all day, I still couldn't figure out which way to go forward. Like a lost butterfly, unable to find its way home in the dark night. The next morning, I still went to the piano room as usual. When I opened the door, Xiao Yi nervously came over and said in a low voice, "Miss Jiang isn't in a good mood this morning. She hasn't even touched her favorite rose tea. Yesterday's cup of tea was still on the windowsill." I gently smelled it and said to Xiao Yi, "You need 6 fresh roses, water at 80 degrees, steep for 3 minutes, not a minute more or less." I carefully demonstrated each step of making tea while Xiao Yi observed attentively. As the floral fragrance spread, Jiang Songning pushed open the door and entered. In that brief moment, I seemed to catch a glimpse of tenderness in her eyes as she looked at me, and a hint of grievance at the corner of her lips. The work handover was far more complicated than expected, with numerous matters in my hands that couldn't be completely transferred in a short time. Moreover, Jiang Songning has always been demanding, requiring meticulous attention to every detail of daily life. I simply got a notebook and recorded everything in detail, from the temperature control in the music room to the coordination of performance outfits. This delay forced me to postpone the handover that was originally scheduled to be completed within a month, and as a result, I ran into the situation I most wanted to avoid. Accompanying Xiao Yuan to the old residence, I harbored inappropriate feelings for Jiang Songning, and even though I hadn't done anything, I still felt guilty facing her future groom. Xiao Yuan wore a custom-tailored suit, with an understated yet luxurious Patek Philippe on his wrist, his hair impeccably styled, exuding the demeanor of a successful businessman in every gesture. I put on my professional smile and approached him. "Mr. Xiao, Miss Jiang arranged for me to pick you up." Along the way, Xiao Yuan kept asking about Jiang Songning, understandably nervous about getting engaged to someone he had never met. Noticing his unease, I gently comforted him. "Miss Jiang is very kind to others. Mr. Xiao needn't worry. You can discuss any issues with me." Upon hearing this, he cast a grateful look at me. We chatted casually on the way to the old mansion, and I had planned to leave after dropping him off. But Madame Jiang called me to stop. She was a renowned iron-fisted figure in the music industry. Although in her 70s, she remained vigorous with piercing eyes. "Little Shun, where is Songning?" Jiang Songning hadn't come? I maintained a calm expression and answered carefully. There were some last-minute changes in rehearsal. Miss Jiang might be a bit late. Madame Jiang let out a cold snort and instructed me to make sure to bring her. I had witnessed how Madame Jiang punished Jiang Songning before, making her practice piano for 6 straight hours until her fingers bled. The scars are still visible on her fingertips today. After leaving, I immediately called Jiang Songning. Thank heavens, she finally answered on the 3rd try. I anxiously asked about her whereabouts, but she remained silent for a long while, only softly calling my name. "Shen Mo." Her voice was somewhat slurred, as if drunk, with melodious piano music playing in the background. I instantly knew where she was, and when I rushed there, I saw Jiang Songning leaning against the grand piano in the bar, several glasses of whiskey in front of her, her black hair falling loosely in the dim light. Hearing footsteps, she slightly raised her eyes, her gaze misty yet still cool, maintaining some clarity despite her intoxication. "You're here? Wait a moment, I'll finish soon." She patted the piano bench, gesturing for me to sit down. "Keep me company for a chat." The Jiang family's concert hall stood in a bustling area, its lights brilliant in the night, the classical European architecture exuding an air of nobility. Jiang Songning suddenly spoke. "Do you think it's beautiful?" My gaze was still fixed on her perfect profile, and I blurted out unconsciously, "Beautiful." I blushed immediately, but fortunately she didn't notice, continuing to speak to herself. "Surface grandeur is merely the decoration of a cage. Even the most magnificent stage cannot confine a truly free soul." She said this with a smile, yet her tone was particularly serious. It said that the Jiang family's music business wasn't entirely legitimate, with some shady deals happening behind the scenes, and only recently began transforming. Over these 10 years, I've witnessed her step-by-step ascent to the pinnacle of the international piano world. The setbacks and pressures she endured during this time remain unknown to outsiders. I couldn't help but ask, "Are you happy?" The word happy lingered on her lips as she gave a slight laugh, but she didn't answer directly. Instead, she looked at me and said, "Your fiancé isn't worthy of you." I was stunned, and she immediately lowered her head. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that." After finishing her last sip of wine, Jiang Songning stood up, instantly returning to her role as the noble and elegant pianist. On my way back, I kept pondering the meaning behind her words. Even after long contemplation, I still couldn't understand, just as I never understood why she appeared alone on the rooftop of that dilapidated apartment years ago. But none of that matters to me anymore, as I'm about to leave this place. From now on, separated by mountains and waters, we'll hardly meet again. It was raining on my last day at work. The northern rain was always like this, heavy and intense, pounding on the ground as if releasing all emotions. I sat in the piano room, quietly packing up my belongings from the agent's office. I spent nearly 10 years in this position, transforming from a naive youth into a capable agent. I knew that every day at 3 in the afternoon, sunlight would stream through the floor-to-ceiling windows onto that Steinway piano. I also knew that by standing in the corner of the piano room, I could hear Jiang Songning's breathing while she practiced. These fragments were once the most precious solace in my life, but now, it's time to let go. The debt of gratitude has been repaid after 10 years, and the days ahead will be left for Xiao Yuan to guard. Xiao Yi looked at me with teary eyes. I ruffled his hair and said with a smile, "Don't be like this, we'll meet again someday." But deep down, I knew this farewell might be our last. This city holds too many bitter memories, and I need to find a new beginning. When leaving, I still held a glimmer of hope, but ultimately couldn't see her one last time. After quitting my job, I shut myself in my rented room and slept for days, as if trying to make up for all the sleep I'd lost over the years. I bought some alcohol and turned the speakers up to maximum volume. The speakers played Jiang Songning's piano pieces, and I laughed like a madman. After laughing, I sat numbly on the floor, staring blankly at the sheet music scattered around the room. When I was young, my greatest wish was to stay alive, believing that as long as I lived well, my father wouldn't jump off the building. After father left, my wish became to work hard, so my mother wouldn't give up on herself. Later, my mother also passed away, and I threw myself completely into work, only wishing to contribute to Jiang Songning's music career. At this moment, I had lost my direction, not knowing where to go. Just as I was lost in thought, the doorbell suddenly rang. Looking through the peephole, I saw Jiang Songning standing outside. I hurriedly opened the door, only then realizing how unkempt I looked. It was too late to close the door, so I had to put on a calm facade and invite her in, forcing a professional smile. Compared to my unease, Jiang Songning remained as elegant as ever, saying softly, "I tried to contact you. The program for tonight's performance needs adjustment, but I can't find the backup files. I happened to be passing by." I suppressed my racing heart while maintaining a professional expression. "Certainly, Miss Jiang. Please have a seat. I'll look for it right away." As I searched for the files, Jiang Songning elegantly sipped her tea, her gaze following my every move. Her watchful eyes made me nervous, and the more anxious I became, the harder it was to find the needed files. Jiang Songning said softly, "There's no need to rush." Then she asked, "Doesn't Manager Shen live with his fiancée?" In my panic, I blurted out, "She's working overtime tonight." After a long search, I finally found all the needed materials and carefully handed them over. After taking the documents, Jiang Songning's gaze lingered on my face for a long while, making my heart race. Just as I was about to say something, she showed a meaningful smile. "I'm getting married, and I need someone reliable to handle the wedding arrangements. Would Manager Shin be willing to continue helping?" The compensation remains the same. Faced with her request, I never learned how to refuse, and my body had already made the choice before my mind could process it. Nodding involuntarily in agreement, watching her elegant figure, countless words ultimately turned into a single sigh. From that day on, I rejoined her team, responsible for preparing this wedding. Perhaps witnessing her wedding in person would help me finally let go of this obsession. Feeling guilty towards Xiao Yuan, I strive for perfecti on in every detail, hoping to create a perfect wedding for Jiang Songning. However, Jiang Songning's whereabouts have been elusive lately, rarely inquiring about wedding matters, with all affairs being communicated through me alone, as if deliberately keeping distance from everyone. It's as if this isn't her wedding, but rather a ceremony that has nothing to do with her. Xiao Yuan's expression grew increasingly melancholic, and one day during his suit fitting, he looked at me hesitantly. Could you ask her if she's coming today? This call shouldn't have been mine to make, but seeing Xiao Yuan's forlorn look, I still dialed the number. Background noise came through from the other end of the line, mixed with Jiang Songning's weary voice. I wanted to hang up, but remembering Xiao Yuan's expectant look, I carefully spoke. The wedding dress has arrived. Would you like to come see it? After a long silence, she said softly, All right, come pick me up. Though I didn't understand her intention, I did as she said. When I arrived at the club, everyone else had left, and she was the only one standing lost in thought by the window. I walked quietly towards her and called out softly, Miss Jiang, Miss Jiang. She suddenly turned around, with a flash of emotion in her eyes that I couldn't understand, leaving me frozen in place. In an instant, she returned to her usual coolness, as if the earlier oddness was just my imagination. I carefully helped her into the car, and she remained silent throughout the journey, resting with her eyes closed, as if trying to isolate herself from the entire world. Through the rearview mirror, I could see her delicate profile. Rarely did I have the chance to look at her so openly, so I couldn't help but steal a few more glances. Thinking of Xiao Yuan, my guilt deepened. I withdrew my gaze and silently recited Buddhist scriptures in my heart. For some reason, a sudden unease welled up from the depths of my heart. I've always trusted my instincts, and my mind began racing quickly. Something was wrong. A black van had been following us for the past half hour, maintaining an eerily consistent distance. Miss Jiang, Miss Jiang. I tried to wake up Jiang Songning, but the person in the back seat remained deeply asleep. Left with no choice, I could only accelerate, and the car behind immediately caught up, with both cars speeding along the mountain road. The pursuing vehicle was clearly modified. No matter how much I accelerated, they kept tight on our tail, until that black commercial vehicle suddenly rammed into us. The massive impact caused the car to lose balance, and our vehicle rolled on the road surface. Fortunately, I managed to turn the steering wheel in time to avoid plunging off the cliff. My vision was blood red and I felt dizzy, but I struggled to crawl out of the driver's seat. Jiang Songning was trapped in the back seat and had finally woken up. She tried to move, but was pinned by the deformed car frame. I found a jack in the trunk and tried to pry open the door using my knowledge of physics, but the severely deformed car body wouldn't budge at all. Gasoline was constantly leaking from the damaged fuel tank, and smoke had started rising from the back seat. In critical moments, my mind becomes exceptionally clear, pushing aside all distractions, focused solely on how to rescue Jiang Songning. As the fire spreads and the car could explode at any moment, Jiang Songning looks up at me. The salary I pay you isn't worth risking your life for. Shinemo, leave quickly. The car is about to explode. Already disturbed, her constant chatter made me interrupt impatiently. Shut up. Jiang Songning suddenly smiled, but I had no time to guess the meaning behind her smile as the flames continued to rage. Blood kept dripping from the wound on my arm as I gritted my teeth, using every ounce of strength to finally pull her out of the car. Then, supporting her, we moved away step by difficult step. Shortly after we left, the car exploded, sending flames shooting into the sky, turning the night sky blood red. I was grateful that I had maintained regular exercise, giving me enough strength to save both our lives in such a situation. The sound of ambulance sirens grew closer, and exhaustion flooded in like a tide. Consciousness gradually became blurry. Jiang Songning regained consciousness before Shinemo. At the moment of the accident, he had turned the steering wheel toward himself. She quietly gazed at the man on the hospital bed, as if truly seeing him for the first time. Jiang Songning had experienced too many betrayals. During her childhood kidnapping incident, her father had abandoned her to save himself. Her cries and calls were answered only by the cold iron door closing before her eyes. Her mother had once firmly promised to stay by her side forever, but ultimately chose eternal farewell with a piano string. Countless people had come and gone in her life, all choosing to leave in the end, making her accustomed to solitude. Yet this man, who should have been the first to abandon her and flee, chose to stay instead. She had always prided herself on being able to see through people's hearts, but she couldn't fathom this man's true thoughts. What was he really thinking? She pondered silently. Like waking up from a hazy dream, I found Jiang Songning gazing at me intently. My chest suddenly tightened. Had she noticed my feelings? Jiang Songning's gaze was piercing as our eyes met, and nervousness caused beads of sweat to form on my palms. Why did you save me? My mind raced, and in the next second I answered with a smile. Miss Jiang, I'm a gambler. The chance to save the life of a world-class pianist. Not everyone gets such an opportunity. Jiang Songning frowned, her deep gaze examining me as if weighing the gravity of my words. What do you want? In their circle, those who claim to want nothing often harbor the biggest ambitions. Only clear price tags bring peace of mind. I carefully considered what request would be worthy of risking my life, and finally gave Jiang Songning a reassuring answer. I want the exclusive agency rights to your next album. That would be enough to secure my livelihood. Seeing Jiang Songning's brow relaxing, I knew I had found the right direction. She smiled lightly and said, something as intangible as an album isn't worth as much as a piano store in the city center. What do you think, Manager Shen? I smiled too. A piano store worth tens of millions. Thank you, Miss Jiang. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement, so Jiang Songning no longer needed to feel guilty towards me. She stood up and said indifferently, then rest well, Manager Shun. You won't need to worry about the engagement anymore. I stayed in the hospital for a full week, and the day I was discharged happened to be Jiang Songning's grand engagement day. All major entertainment media rushed to cover the grand marriage alliance between the Jiang and Xiao families. The luxurious concert hall was decorated like a dream, with crystal lights refracting brilliant rays. Everything should come to an end now, and we should each live well on our own paths. Yet this melancholy in my heart just won't fade away. I wandered aimlessly through the streets and unknowingly walked into a quiet bar. All these years, I've always been the one cleaning up messes, rarely letting myself indulge. I ordered a whiskey, and as the liquid touched my throat, its spicy taste made me frown. People say drinking drowns sorrows, but this bitter taste only made my tears fall like rain, dropping into the glass, turning into a cup of bitter memories. As my consciousness began to blur, I fumbled for my phone to contact a designated driver service, asking them to ensure I got home safely. At the engagement party, Jiang Songning received an unexpected call from Shin's manager. This gave her a perfect excuse to slip away, escaping from this false ceremony. Upon arriving at the bar, the uniformed designated driver hurriedly approached. This gentleman is heavily intoxicated and couldn't tell me where he lives, so I had to contact the most frequently dialed number in his phone. He looked at Jiang Songning anxiously and asked, "You're not his boss, are you? I hope he won't file a complaint against me when he wakes up." Jiang Songning took over the intoxicated Shen Mo and reassured him gently. "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything from here." She supported Shen Mo as they left. The drunken man was childishly willful, sometimes gently caressing her face, sometimes messing up her hair. Jiang Songning had never seen him so relaxed before, and couldn't help but probe, "Why did you choose to stay by my side?" The man pondered hazily for a moment, then showed an innocent smile. "Repaying a debt of gratitude." "What debt of gratitude?" "The kindness of saving my life." Jiang Songning continued asking, "How do you plan to repay it?" "Give her all the best things in this world." "Why are you so persistent?" "Because I love her deeply." Jiang Songning had studied psychology at the conservatory and was well-versed in the art of gradual questioning. She had hoped to uncover the truth, but received such an unexpected answer. He loved her. Manager Shen loved her. Jiang Songning carefully observed Shun Mo's drunken state. His smile was pure, his drunkenness hazy, without a trace of falsehood. Countless people had confessed their love to her, and she had witnessed various kinds of love, some as fierce as fire, others delicate and lasting. But she had never encountered love like this, buried deep in one's heart for years, unknown to anyone. Many puzzles suddenly became clear. Why was there no trace of a woman's presence in Manager Shin's residence? Jiang Songning fell into deep thought, wondering if this love was worthy of trust. A sincere heart, willing to risk life and death for love alone. The next day, I woke up from my hangover with a severe headache, vaguely remembering having had a dream. The only thing clear was Jiang Songning's bright, star-like eyes. Why did he meet her again in his dream? It wasn't right to have fantasies about someone else's fiancée. For a long time afterward, I deliberately avoided all entertainment news. I traveled across the country by train, leaving footprints in every unfamiliar city. I visited many single-parent families in need of assistance and provided varying degrees of support based on their actual situations. I often think that if someone had reached out to help at that crucial moment, perhaps my mother's fate could have been different. There is too much suffering in this world. All I can do is help those around me to the best of my ability. Until that day, when shocking news arrived, piano goddess Jiang Songning announced her retirement from the entertainment industry. The media brutally tore apart her photos with Xiao Yuan, pairing them with an eye-catching headline. High-profile engagement broken off. Why did the piano goddess choose to withdraw from public life? I was terribly anxious and immediately contacted Xiao Yuan. His words carried a sense of helplessness. Agent Shun, this is a consideration of family interests. Personal feelings must take second place, and I am powerless to change it. After calming down and thinking carefully, I gradually saw the clues. This might have been Jiang Songning's carefully planned exit. Though she appeared glamorous these years, I could feel her inner exhaustion, suffocated by the shackles of fame and fortune. I had subtly reminded her before, but she always brushed it off casually. It turns out from the beginning, he had been planning to escape from this circle. Recalling her vulnerable state when drunk, this world of glories was nothing but another form of prison for her. At this moment, what she needed most was a warm support, just like when she firmly held my hand as my mother and I were falling years ago. No matter who it might be, as long as they could give her strength and comfort. As soon as this thought flashed through my mind, I immediately rushed to her studio. The once brightly lit piano room was now shrouded in darkness. The last savings had been used to settle the staff. Walking through the silent corridor and pushing open the door, Jiang Songning sat alone at the piano, immersed in shadows, while the night wind stirred the curtains, playing a lonely melody. She looked up at me, her gaze deep and unfathomable, as if concealing countless worries. I slowly reached out and gently held her hand. All the words I had rehearsed countless times in my mind now dissipated in this fleeting warmth. At this moment, I just wanted to hold her hand tightly, just as she had once given me warmth and strength. Her thoughts drifted back to her mother. That gifted pianist, who was crushed by the rules of the wealthy elite, ultimately became a laughingstock in the music circle. The wealthy family wanted to transform a pure musical genius into a commercial star, demanding her to be diplomatic, versatile, and know how to make compromises. Everyone was pushing her mother towards the edge of breakdown in their own way. Outsiders said she didn't understand business operations and wasn't worthy of such a position. But what if these rules themselves were wrong? The Jiang family was still operating illegal music copyright transactions behind the scenes. Her mother discovered these dark secrets and couldn't turn a blind eye. She wanted to expose the truth, but was swallowed by lies. Jiang Songning had originally planned to face all this alone, letting all the darkness fade away with the wind. But then Shen Emo appeared. Was it because of love? When Shen Emo first arrived, she spotted him immediately. While everyone was busy packing up to leave, he walked against the flow of people, making his way towards her through scattered music sheets. Just like the brave knight in fairy tales rushing to the princess's side. Thinking of this, Jiang Songning couldn't help but smile. How could there be such a foolish person in the world? He quietly walked up to her and held her hand tightly, warmth continuously flowing from his palm. At that moment, Jiang Songning was startled to realize how icy cold her own hands were. She grasped his hand in return. In these turbulent times, only his warmth was a real source of support. I accompanied Jiang Songning as she liquidated the studio. When she accepted media interviews, angry fans threw eggs at her. The Jiang family owed too many truths, and the public needed an outlet for their emotions. This was the inevitable price to pay. On the day Jiang Songning announced her retirement from the entertainment industry, old Mr. Jiang was hospitalized for a sudden stroke. That evening, she invited me for drinks. When I arrived, I found it was her private piano room. I hesitated at the doorway. This doesn't seem quite appropriate, does it? We're not yet close enough to drink together. It makes me feel a bit uneasy. Jiang Songning lowered her eyelids, her whole being radiating desolation, her voice choked with emotion. Was she crying? After all, that was her family member. My heart ached painfully. I took the bottle, seeing a glimmer of light flash in her eyes. Well, what harm is there in getting drunk with her? Endurance has always been my forte. I had never seen Jiang Songning like this before. Her black dress was disheveled, her dark hair scattered, looking so fragile as if she might dissolve into the night at any moment. She had always been above it all, the center of attention under the spotlight, displaying elegance in every move. But now she looked like a celestial being fallen to the mortal world. In her drunken haze, she kept murmuring my name, insisting on my response. Her intoxicated voice carried a sweet tone, each call striking my heart, making it race uncontrollably. She suddenly leaned in close, leaving only a palm's width between them. Moonlight fell on her long eyelashes, casting delicate shadows. Manager Shen, will you always stay by my side? I didn't answer immediately. Life is long, who can promise forever? Moreover, I'm just her manager. But she insisted on an answer, like a stubborn child. I had no choice but to softly reply. Yes, I will always be here. After getting the promise, she quieted down, frowning at me, lost in thought. Suddenly saying she felt hot, her slender fingers brushed back her hair, revealing her snow-white nape. That gesture carried an inexplicable allure. I never thought I would use such words to describe Jiang Songning. After a moment's daze, I quickly averted my gaze. Yet she kept leaning closer to me, and I felt my cheeks burning. This cold winter somehow felt so stuffy. I forcibly maintained my distance. She gave me a puzzled look, then started drinking again, until she finally passed out. Before falling asleep, she gazed at me steadily, with a hint of encouragement in her eyes. Why encouragement? After settling her in, I went home and tossed and turned all night trying to understand. The next day, she called to specifically thank me for taking such good care of her. I smiled and said, "It's my duty, Miss Jiang." After a moment of silence on the other end, she said through gritted teeth, "Shun mo, you." She hung up mid-sentence, leaving me puzzled. After the studio disbanded, we seemed to have no reason to meet again. I hadn't seen her for several days, and when we met again, he was drunk and knocking on my door. As soon as I opened the door, she collapsed into my arms. I used all my strength to help her to the sofa, and just as I was about to leave, she grabbed my wrist, causing me to stumble and fall into her embrace. With only a finger's width between us, she gazed deeply into my eyes and called softly, "Shen Mo," a name so ordinary, yet when she softly uttered it, it made my heart tremble. My reflection in her eyes made it seem as if I was the only one left in the world, and my heartbeat grew increasingly distinct in my chest. Our breaths intertwined as I unconsciously drew closer to her until our lips met. In that moment, reason collapsed, and all restraint melted away like spring waters. At daybreak, I fled the scene like a coward. Only after reaching downstairs did I suddenly remember this was my own home. I had no choice but to wander nearby until dusk, then carefully turn the doorknob. The room suddenly lit up like daylight, and Jiang Songning was still there, raising an eyebrow at me, planning to be someone who loves and leaves. I stood at the doorway, unable to move forward or backward. "Come here, let's have a proper talk." I opened my mouth to explain that last night was just a moment of impulse, but she raised her hand to stop me. "You've always been poor with words, so let me do the talking this time." Jiang Songning's expression was unprecedentedly serious, making my heart leap into my throat. "Shen Mo, you always see me as too perfect, but I'm just an ordinary person with emotions and desires, capable of being moved and feeling jealous." I wanted to object, but was stopped by her following words. "Your judgment might not be clear enough right now, and it would be too much to ask you to make a choice. But I'm more afraid that if I give you too much time to think, once you see my true nature, you won't like me the way you do now. Whether your feelings for me are gratitude or admiration, since you've stirred my heart, don't think you can easily walk away." She pulled out a brilliant diamond ring from her pocket, her eyes sparkling like stars. "Shen Mo, would you like to spend the rest of your life with me?" My mind went blank, and I found myself nodding unconsciously as she slipped the ring onto my ring finger. "Did you bring your ID?" I nodded mechanically, and a gentle smile curved her lips. "Then let's go." "Where to?" "The Civil Affairs Bureau." As the sun was setting, we walked out of the gate holding our red marriage certificate, becoming the last newlyweds of this dusk. The sunset glowed like fire, painting the horizon in a